Today we've got an interesting video because we're going to be looking at a very old guitar that's been in production for decades and a brand new guitar from Taylor. And we're going to be looking at not just the difference between these two guitars, but the use of maple in acoustic guitar, so stay tuned. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee.
And I'm Cooper Greenberg.
We're here with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, grab one of our t-shirts at our spring store linked below. So, Cooper, that's a classic. This is going to be a neo-classic, we'll call it, because I love this guitar. But definitely old meets new, with certain similarities and a lot of differences. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I think this one kind of doesn't get its due either, you know, looking at all of Gibson's dreadnoughts. So it's cool to look a little deeper into it, but I think this one, like you said, will be a kind of modern classic for sure.
I think so. It's unique. If you haven't seen this guitar, make sure that you are a subscriber to our channel and check out the review we've already done on it. But this is new for 2022 from Taylor, and this is the new American Dream AD27e Flametop, not to be confused with an existing AD27e that is a mahogany top guitar, because this thing is all maple, which in our previous video we established is interesting, weird, shouldn't work, and does. Yeah. It's awesome. But you've got a classic. Yeah. From hailing from the 60s. This is a Gibson Dove.
Yeah, I got the Dove from the original collection in Gibson's acoustic lineup, and this is spruce and maple. Right. So you got maple back and sides on here. I think it's pretty cool. You know, you think about the classic Gibson Jumbos, SJ200 and J185 and all that being maple. This is in just a classic square shoulder dreadnought body shape. Right. Yeah, played by a lot of people, but not maybe mentioned as much as the Hummingbird.
Well, and we've done a video on the Dove before comparing it to the Hummingbird, and they do sound different because of the maple back and sides, the reflection that it gives to the sound. And one of the things that we talked about in that video that the Dove has kind of left and come back into the Gibson lineup a few times. And I don't really get that. I think it's a great guitar. It definitely is a classic. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of maple. Yeah. You know, maple on the tops of electric guitars, maple on the back and sides, and evidently now the top of acoustic guitars, maple necks on electric guitars, or acoustics in this particular case. Maple's a fantastic tone wood for use, and it's a North American tone wood. Yeah. Which means right now we don't have to wait for a ship to come in from somewhere else.
Which, you know, that's a rare thing right now.
Right. Yeah, that's a bonus. So the point of the video, these are, we should say, dramatically different guitars in a lot of ways. They're both kind of dreadnought shaped, but this is the Grand Pacific, which is more of a round shoulder dreadnought body shape, similar but not exact to a J45. What Cooper has is a classic square shoulder dreadnought. They're both big guitars. Yeah, you know, that one feels a little bit bigger to me. Yeah,
and I mean, width-wise, doesn't seem too far off.
Yeah, I think they're about on par.
But this is just, you know, even signaled by this big old headstock and everything, it's a grandiose guitar.
Yeah, and the price difference between these two is pretty substantial. A Dove from the original series is what, over $4,000, just over $4,000. Nitro finished. It's got this cherry stained maple back and sides. The ornate pick guard. You know, it's the classic, Gibson stuff that you would expect. You know, and the price is up there. As part of the American Dream line, this is more of a value-oriented American-made guitar. Again, both are from all solid wood. They have different bracing. This is classic Gibson X-style bracing. This is Taylor's new V-class bracing. New, it's several years old at this point.
But 2019 for V-class?
I think so, or 2018. It's all a blur at this point. Yeah. It's certainly newer than 60s, X-style bracing of the Gibson. So, we're not trying to say that in any way these are a really good comparison, apples to apples. But the idea here is so that you can get an idea of what's going on with maple. So let's talk about maple as a tone wood as it pertains to acoustic guitars. And I'm going to say, before we talk about the aspects of it, not enough acoustic guitar manufacturers utilize maple enough. Yeah. Gibson has it on standard models. Taylor has it on standard models and has for a very, very long time. Guild
Where's the Martin?
Yeah, Martin does it in like limited editions or custom shops. And I don't really understand that. Well, I might. I think part of it is people associate maple with brightness. And certainly that was true of Taylor's offerings. It's true of Gibson's offerings. And when Taylor redesigned their 600 series years ago, Andy Power said one of the most like things I've ever heard. Are you familiar with this?
I think so, but yeah.
He basically said that what the flat top acoustic guitar market has done is taken a guitar that they'd already designed for mahogany and rosewood and then just put maple on it and said, wow, that's bright.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that isn't always necessarily a bad thing.
No.
But it is bright, and some people don't want bright. Well, it turns out that maple, to me, is probably the most transparent tone wood when it comes to reflecting the player and the builder. Depending upon how you craft that guitar, you can really make it sound different. Similar to how orchestral instruments with spruce and maple can sound and really reflect both the player and the builder, depending upon how that cello or violin is played. And so that is part of the downfall with maple. There's just not enough companies utilize it. But let's talk about it. So we talked about bright. When you play something like the Dove, what do you get out of it?
I think for me, especially since maple is changing in our minds, I associate it more with punch now. Not as much bright, but it's a punchy sound, quick response. We saw that immediately on here, how really forward it is. And on this one especially, I was playing it right before we started. It's bright, but it's loud. It's kind of, like you said, the flat EQ, if you're looking at it, but just turn it up a little bit to me. But I mean, I'm surprised, especially with that one, how warm it can sound. It's still, bright and punchy and everything, but it's such a rounded tone, especially on the 27 Flametop. I don't know. What about you? I mean, what do you get off of it?
Historically, looking at a classic spruce maple guitar like the one you're holding, I do like to think of, it's always difficult talking about sound with words. Andy said that once, Andy Powers did in a meeting I was in, and I was like, you know what? That is probably the most accurate thing I've ever heard. Because everyone hears things a little bit differently, and then you're just trying to describe what you hear. But if we think of like a graphic EQ on like an old stereo or something, right? You had one side of the EQ that was the treble, the other side that was the bass, and you had your mids, and people would do like little waves or smiley faces or whatever you wanted to do to accentuate certain frequencies, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about frequencies. I've always considered maple to be flat. And have the broadest, one spectrum. Of the broader EQs. Rosewood is the broadest. It has really low lows, really high highs.
That's your smiley face.
Scooped mid-range. It is your smiley face because that mid-range is pulled down, but you have more bass than anything else, and you have more treble really than anything else, arguably. Some people will say maple will have more treble than rosewood, but I think they're about equal. It doesn't have as much bass, and it's just pretty flat. And then it has this dampening characteristic to it. And that's kind of like mahogany does in a way where you don't get a lot of overtones. And depending upon the instrument's design, it could sustain a lot, but the maple on its own tends to not just generate a lot of sustain. It'll actually kind of dampen certain frequencies, which is why it's so even kill. And the great thing about that is you can then accentuate things, right? So with this guitar, for instance, it's spruce, it's maple. I think that maple does that job of being very even, and then the rest of the instrument is really that spruce top and the bracing that Gibson's done, giving it kind of a richness and that vintage tone that we're familiar with Gibson on. Not as much warmth as mahogany, not as much bass as rosewood. That's what it is. This thing's just a different animal. And the big thing, if you haven't figured out already, that makes this different is that it's all maple. The top is maple, which is just weird, and we will continue saying that because it is. The back and sides are maple, the neck's maple, and why is it weird for a top to be maple?
Because it's just so hard. I mean, it's like not what you expect from, say, a spruce or cedar or something that can expand and move when you attack it. I mean, it's a hard wood.
Well, think about other things that we use maple for. Like maple's made for baseball bats, right? It's very stiff, dense, hard wood. So typically you can use that on back and sides of a guitar, but the top is a softwood, cedar, spruce. These are soft tone woods. When you put koa or mahogany, they're harder than spruce, they're harder than cedar, and so what they tend to do is compress the dynamics and introduce a lot of warmth, because in compressing that, you're accentuating some of that mid-range. But typically, maple wouldn't be used for a top because it's just too dense.
Yeah.
And the top's not going to move a lot. The only time you ever see it on the top of a flat top acoustic guitar previously was a laminate. You know, where all you're seeing is like very pretty flame or quilt, but it's laminated and typically
Which
a lower
this
price
one has
guitar.
a really pretty flame, but that's solid
But it's
maple.
it's all solid wood. And I think what Taylor has done is a combination of the bracing and probably the thickness of the top. They've been able to figure out how to make maple work.
Yeah.
And it does a lot of the things we'd expect mahogany to do, but it's a little different.
Yeah.
So you and I both think this guitar sounds very warm.
Yeah.
Which is weird. It's an all maple guitar.
Yeah, counterintuitive on all maple.
But it's punchy. It's kind of out there, but it's warm. Whereas mahogany is probably warm, but it's just kind of here.
Yeah.
You know,
Hanging
there's
back
kind of a
little bit.
difference in that response to it. Check out the back. The back's pretty nice too. So all in all, it's a very cool exercise in the attributes of what maple does. What you can get out of it, and then some of the new things. I wouldn't be surprised now that Taylor's doing this if some other companies follow suit.
I'd like to see if somebody can make it work with X bracing, you know, as opposed to, like you said, V-Class probably contributes to it being able to work as well as it does. But maybe putting it on some standard model that we know. Imagine a maple top Dove. I mean, I don't know if that would work, but
Can make it work.
I'd love to see it. One of my favorite parts, just because I'm staring at it, is that reveal.
Oh, the reveal binding.
It's
Yeah,
so
it's pretty
nice.
crisp. Pretty crisp, pretty nice.
Pretty crisp McKee over there.
So this guitar was pretty surprising in how its response is. And it's a good comparison, so you can hear kind of what the classic maple spruce sound is, at least in a big dreadnought guitar, versus kind of this new warm take, like worn in Western boot sound that this guitar.
What's the name of the burst on that one? It's something dusky
tobacco burst or something.
like that. It just looks so good. I love that finish.
So listen to the comparison of these, and you're going to hear the brightness and the dynamic response that comes out of spruce versus that dampened warmth, kind of compressed sound that's still punchy that's coming out of this guitar. Check it out. So there you have it. A great comparison of two incredibly different guitars to kind of prove a point.
Yeah.
And I think one of the points is maple should get used more.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's weird because there's only a few core models that you can name with maple back and sides anyway. But now we have this shining example of what it can be like, so it'll be cool. Hopefully they'll do more with it. But.
And there's a good ecological reason for it as well. And that is that the maple that most of these manufacturers source comes from the U.S. It's mostly from managed forests. Mm-hmm. Taylor and some other organizations are doing a lot to make sure that these forests are protected. But there's a whole lot less involved in harvesting these trees and getting them to a manufacturer in the U.S.
Yeah.
Versus a lot of the tone woods that are more exotic and come from places overseas. If there's anything that this pandemic has shown, it's that bottleneck kind of reveals all of the work that goes into cultivating, harvesting, and transporting, certain tone woods.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a benefit to having something that's kind of the same thing with that guitar. I think the neck's mahogany, but the body is maple, and the top is spruce. Those are North American woods.
Yeah.
And so it certainly benefits from that standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's really, does it make a good guitar? Because that could be a great story and you get a bad guitar. And I think maple makes a really good guitar. And I'm going to beat the drum because I want more manufacturers making maple. I want more people experiencing maple guitars. One of my favorite acoustic guitars I own is amazing quilted maple. So it looks beautiful. It sounds great. And that's what you want,
Which
right?
one is that one?
It's a Doyle Dyke signature model.
That's right.
That's
right.
One of the first ones that belonged to Doyle. But
that's very
I should feature it on here sometime.
That would be, that'd
cool
be great.
guitar.
And we'll get him on here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Doyle, who's guitar poor like the rest of us. So.
We got enough subscribers now. We can justify it, Talk about that right there.
Definitely. Thank you guys to everyone who does subscribe to the channel. You helped us reach 100,000. Feels like it was a long time coming, but came quickly at the same time.
Yeah.
So big thanks to everybody. And if you haven't subscribed yet, 100,000 people say that you should.
That's true. And when we look on the back end, we can see that all the people that watch this, that 100,000 makes up for about 15% of it. So
where are you guys? Come on.
Get over here. What are you doing?
So anyways, tell us your thoughts. Do you own a maple guitar? Have you shied away from maple? What has your opinion been? And is it changing? Because one of the things I think is happening is that this industry is learning how to evolve and eke out the most out of guitars, try new tone woods, and revisit tone woods to make something new from something in the past. So let us know your opinion below. And like I said, make sure that you subscribe, turn on notifications, and then like our videos, and keep coming back for more. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.